What's up, everybody? This is Terrence Plummer II. You're tuned in to the UCF Football Updates Podcast. Let's go.
This is Mac Loudermilk, and you're listening to the UCF Football Updates Podcast.
What up, UCF Nation? This is Alan Levin of the UCF Football Update Podcast, and you're tuning in for episode 4. Remember, all past episodes can be found on my YouTube channel and on my Instagram at ucf.football.updates. Today, we feature another UCF legend, a former Holder of the Year winner, all-conference second-team member, and quite possibly the best hair and beard combo in school history. So, with that being said, I suppose the most important question I have to ask is, did you have the best hair and beard combo in UCF history?
I think so. It's going to be very hard to find somebody that could top this, to be honest.
I agree with you, man. That was part of your game, man. Everyone knew about that. So, got to ask you. So, you were obviously one of the few players that experienced. I think there was, when I counted, maybe like 10 or 11 that experienced playing through all 3 coaching staffs over the last few years. O'Leary, then Frost, and then obviously Heupel. So, what was that like, kind of playing for not just 3 coaches, but having to go through 3 coaching transitions?
It wasn't difficult, but it was I guess a challenge. Every coach had their own different way of running things. O'Leary was pretty stern and very didn't put up with any BS really. Frost was kind of, as long as you did your job, then there was really no issue. And then Heupel was kind of a mix between the two. He was pretty stern. He had his rules, but if you did your job and kind of just did what you're there to do, then there was no issues with it. But I think that the most challenging part is probably trying to learn like what each coach wanted as far as like what their culture was going to be. O'Leary was pretty simple. They're going to be tough, physical team, run downhill football, run power at you, line up a 4-3 defense and just stop whatever gets thrown at them. Frost was a total different. It was, get the athletes out in space and let them do what they do. And then Heupel was kind of a mix of, deep ball, quick pass game, and then downhill run game and defense, same different philosophies defensively.
Right.
Special teams, it was weird because like my first 2 years of O'Leary, it was a pro style punt. There was no shield. You had a 1 up back and gunners, and it was the traditional rules as far as punting goes. And then when DeWitt came in there with Frost staff, it was go back to the new shield version of punt, kind of do some rollout stuff, kind of utilize the rule in college football to where, everyone can free release. Nobody has to wait for the thud of the kick.
Right.
And then, whenever Toth came with Heupel, it was kind of a mix between the two. We stayed in shield, but Toth understood and like kind of respected, what I've done under DeWitt and under O'Leary, and kind of knew that, I wasn't just a guy off the street kicking a football. Like I had some talent to me. So he was cool, and he would ask our opinions on protection and stuff and what kind of schematically wise what he was thinking. And so it was that was a pretty neat aspect of it, just kind of have some input on things. But yeah, everything had their own little way of handling things, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Was it hard though? Like just having recruits from obviously 3 different coaches, like you had guys that signed up to play for O'Leary, guys that signed up to play for Frost. Was that difficult, or did that create any division, or were you kind of able to still come together as a team?
No, I mean, there was a couple of guys who ended up transferring out of there who didn't, stick with the new coaches. And I mean, that's understandable, because whenever you go through the recruiting process, you really get to know the coaches. And then whenever they leave, you're kind of up in the air about what you should do, if you're going to stay, if you're going to mess with the new coaching staff. And ultimately, if you don't mess with the new coaching staff, then it's probably in your best interest to transfer out of there and go somewhere where you can kind of vibe with somebody.
Sure.
But for the most part, no, everyone was one brotherhood in that locker room. There was no division. No one. There wasn't a Heupel group and a Frost group and a O'Leary group. Everyone kind of meshed together with each other.
Yeah, no, I got you. So we'll get into, some of the different teams you were on while you're at UCF, but kind of want to catch up to like present day. I know after you graduated from UCF, you had a couple camp invites, with the Bucks, if I recall correctly. And, I see you're posting on Instagram some of your videos of you punting. So what's your kind of pro journey looking like right now? Have you played, maybe outside the NFL? Are you still going for it, or give us an update there?
I'm definitely still going for it. This has been a lifelong dream. Unfortunately, there's only 32 jobs in the world to do what I want to do. So it's a hard, job to get into, but once you get into it, then you're going to be in there for a while if you can do your job. Truthfully, coming out of college, I was not ready to punt in NFL. I wasn't consistent enough. I didn't trust myself enough, my technique enough. Yeah, I mean, I could punt well, but it wasn't an NFL caliber. But now, after having some time off, really focusing on my technique, focusing on my form, and really just working my butt off in the weight room, just kind of being a true specialist and developing my explosive power and developing my drop and everything. I can do some funky things with the football now, as far as what kind of ball flights I want, and so that's been nice. I think now, whenever I get my call, I'm definitely ready for it now. But right now, it's just kind of staying ready for when that call comes, because you never know with COVID, if someone gets sick, they need somebody.
Yeah.
I know I'm on a 3 or 4 team short list, so if they need some guys to come punt for their returners during practice when they play a left-footed punter during the regular season, I get a call and go kick for them. And so really, it's just trying to stay ready for whatever comes. But yes, it's a lifelong dream that I don't really want to give up anytime soon.
No, I hear that. Are you open to playing in leagues outside of the U.S. or maybe just leagues within the U.S. that aren't the NFL? Whether it's USFL or XFL when it comes back. Or are you kind of strictly focused on the NFL?
No, I'm open to whatever possible. The only thing, like with the Canadian League, it's hard to do just because I don't do all three. Like I'm just a punter. Right. So most of the guys up in the Canadian League, they do all three just because like they have roster spot issues with the number of Americans they can carry on their rosters. So they don't want to carry 3 different guys if they can only carry one, But yeah, I'm definitely open to the XFL, USFL, whatever can get me that film to hopefully get me up to the NFL and put me on some more teams' radars and everything. But yeah, definitely up for that.
Right. Cool, man. Well, yeah, we definitely wish you the best of luck there. So, kind of going back to your UCF career, you, like you said, you were on quite a range of teams. I mean, whether it was the undefeated squads or the teams that didn't even win a game in 2015. That your first year, your redshirt year, you were part of a conference-winning team, and then just a year later, it kind of fell apart. The wheels came off. So what happened in 2015? I think that puzzled a lot of UCF fans. I mean, we've heard the stories that there was a lot of youth on the team and we lost a lot of guys from the year before, but nonetheless, it was pretty surprising to go from a conference, championship or a piece of a conference championship to, not winning a single game. So what kind of happened that year?
Yeah, I think one of the large aspects of it was the youth on the team. We only have 7 seniors in the locker room, and that's not a good thing. I mean, I'm pretty sure whenever I graduated, we had I think it was 12 or 13 guys in my senior class alone, but we only have 7 leaders, or 7 seniors rather. And not all of those 7 seniors are really good leaders or good examples in the locker room. And that can kind of create some issues. There were some trust issues between the coaches, the coaching staff, and the players. Mm-hmm. And kind of once we lost to Furman, that's just demoralizing really for a team.
Yeah.
That was kind of once that happened, that was kind of a giant, just like taking a big balloon with a needle and just popping it, just kind of deflating the whole season and just kind of like, what's the point of this at this time,
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think that the biggest part would have to be just like the lack of true, like only 7 seniors and trying to ask a lot of young guys to step up and fill those roles when the experience wasn't there. That's definitely probably the biggest issue in that whole scenario.
Yeah, man, that makes sense. So I got to ask you, I ask this every time to guys that have played for O'Leary. I've gotten different answers. I actually spoke with Terrence Plummer yesterday, and I've spoke with Kyle Israel, guys that have, played for O'Leary, and there's always some unique O'Leary story, man. Like I know he was an old school coach and he just had his ways. So, I got to ask you, what is your best O'Leary story that you're comfortable with, with putting out there? Cause there's always something. And then I got to ask you, I would, not to ask you another question about your beard, but he probably didn't allow like long hair and beards, right? So I'm assuming you did not have that season.
Yeah, no. So I guess the funniest O'Leary story I can tell, it's not really that funny, but it's just like one of the ones I can tell was, so when I first came to UCF, I was recruited as a tight end / punter. And so I spent pretty much that whole off season from my senior year into freshman year of college, kind of trying to bulk up, beef up, getting ready to take on the load of being a tight end / H-back and punting. But I didn't spend anywhere the amount of time I should have punting. And so when I arrived on campus, they asked me if I was ready to kick some football. I was like, yeah, but what about tight end? He goes, don't worry about it. Just focus on punting. So I was like, okay, it's going to be rough. And then I'll never forget the first practice of camp. The specialist had to be out there like 30 minutes before pre-practice even started because O'Leary came out super early to watch us warm up and kick and to chart everything.
Right.
And, my first time taking a snap from Gage Marcille, O'Leary standing right there beside me, and I'm shaking in my cleats, really. I think I shanked like 7 punts in a row, just right off the side of my foot. They went straight out of bounds. Was not good whatsoever. And I was on scholarship at this point coming in.
Right.
He just turns and looks at me and goes, hey, you better start punting like a scholarship player, son, or else we're going to find someone else. And that was kind of like a very first day. Haven't really talked to O'Leary a whole lot. And then just kind of realizing that I'm in it now. Like, this is a business I got to perform. So that's my best O'Leary story I can tell. But along with like the hair rule. So when I showed up for at UCF, I had decently long hair. It wasn't like this at all. It might have been just off my neck a little bit. But he had a rule to where no facial hair besides a mustache, and your hair cannot touch your collar. And so we were getting recognized for our GPAs. I think it was in the spring. And I made the dean's list, so I stood up. But when I stood up, like my hair kind of fell forward, and I kind of just tossed my head back to get out of my face.
Right.
And we made eye contact, and he's just looking at me like he had this look on his face. And then he stopped me in the hallway afterwards, and he said, "Get your hair cut or your scholarship's gone." So that very next day, I went to a barber, and I snipped everything off. I had a not clean, but I tried to do the fade when it was popular back in the day.
Yeah.
That was not the haircut for me, but I went and did that, and then showed up the next day, haircut, clean shaven, and
Right.
So he was pretty strict on that rule. He did not allow any type of facial hair whatsoever.
That's crazy. Just to pull your scholarship just because of your hair, that would be.
I don't know if he actually meant he was going to, but just having your head coach tell you that when he controls, if you get
you're going to get a haircut right away.
Get a haircut right away, absolutely.
So you mentioned that you were recruited out of high school as a tight end, a punter, but in high school, were you playing tight end, or were you strictly a punter in high school?
No. In high school, when I was a freshman in high school, I was a long snapper.
Okay.
And then I was screwing around at practice one day and just kicking a football across the field, and my head coach saw me, and he said, "Forget long snapping, focus on punting."
Okay.
Okay. But all throughout that, I was playing quarterback. I was a quarterback in 9th grade. Sophomore year, still a quarterback, and then we had a couple injuries later on in the year, and they wanted to try me as a H-back or a tight end H-back, which is the guy who moves around, and so I did that. And then junior year, I did that for probably most of my playing time, along with punting. And then senior year was finally my time to be quarterback. I think we had 2 tight ends get injured though, and so I had to kind of fill the tight end role my senior year, along with punting. So I was versed in being a tight end, but I was not a collegiate tight end whatsoever. I wasn't 6'5", I wasn't the necessary height for it, but I had some skills behind me.
So you knew if you were playing at the next level in college, you'd be playing as a punter. Or did you think quarterback maybe?
I mean, I always dreamed of being an NFL quarterback, but if you don't start 3 or 4 seasons in high school, it's kind of hard to get that big D1 offer. Some guys are naturally talented enough, can do it, but I couldn't throw the ball like those guys could. And so I never thought punting would be my ticket to college, to be honest. I always thought it would be something else. I wasn't sure if I'd even be going to a D1. I always thought it'd be like a mid-major, like a Georgia Southern or a Kennesaw State or something like that.
Okay.
But when UCF came knocking and, offered the full scholarship on punting and tight end, it was kind of a no-brainer. Yeah, man.
No doubt about that. Well, I hear that. So let's go into, obviously that, you talked about that 2015 year, but then 2 short years after that, we're going into the 2017 season and UCF goes undefeated. So what was that like? Obviously you guys are really down that 2015 season, and, in 2016, some life is back, you win 6 games, you get to a bowl game, but that 2017 season, once again, just like the 2015 was super unexpected. But I remember hearing an interview with Jordan Akins. It was like at media day before the season. And someone asked him like, how many games can this team realistically win? And he goes, I think we can win them all. And obviously, you hear that and it's just like, all right, well, what is he supposed to say? We're only going to win 7-8 games, but obviously that ended up happening. So, was that expected, that type of success? And what was that like kind of being part of that atmosphere of a team that didn't lose?
I mean, yeah, we set a pretty high standard. And for us, biggest thing coming in, it was set a new standard every day. And so this first season we were there, we kind of saw like little glimpses of what could be under his offense, under Chin's defense. And then that whole offseason going from 16 to 17, just every practice we did, every warm-up we did, every weightlifting session that we did, like there was a new standard being set every day until finally like it got to where if practice wasn't excellent, then it wasn't a good practice for us. Like there was no 1 or 2 plays off, like everything was crisp and on point. And it got to the point to where we were kind of governing ourselves. That Frost was kind of unique in that there were no team rules. It was behave like a man, do your job, and you won't have any issues. Like hold yourself accountable. Like don't worry about just yourself, but think about like how the way you practice, how the way you work out, think about how that's going to affect the guy to your left and to your right. Just completely unselfish and doing everything for the ones around you, not just you. And so like just the accountability that was on that team. And of course, like some luck goes into being undefeated. Sure. Well, like Mike Hughes' return, if you go back and watch the film, I think there's like 2 or 3 guys just missed their block on the backside of the kickoff that he ran back to seal the game up.
Yeah.
And so and Mike Hughes, just being a freak athlete he is, just made a couple cuts and off to the races. So, I mean, like, I think once we beat Maryland at Maryland, it kind of clicked and we're like, okay, we have a chance of being like really good this year. That's when it kind of all settled in that year about what this team could actually do. And then from there, it was just not letting ourselves stumble. It's just the next week, the next day, take it day by day. You can't get the big head, because as soon as that happens, you're going to get beat by an underdog. And so we just had the mentality of, just go out there, practice, set a new standard every day, keep raising the bar until eventually like the bar is going to be pretty hard to reach, but that's just how good things are going for you.
How special was that for, especially someone like you that was on that 2015 team? I think, guys like you and Kulu Biale, and I know there's a couple other guys that were on both teams. I mean, what was that like to have that turnaround and go from, worst to best?
I think it was pretty. I mean, I have the blessing to say I've seen the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows in college football.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, that's not a whole lot of kids can say that. I don't think a whole lot of kids want to say that. But, I mean, it puts into perspective now, just like winning a college football game is not easy. Losing them all is also not easy. It takes a lot of bad luck to happen your way to lose every single game in a season.
Sure.
But, I mean, just – it puts things into perspective, just like you never take a win for granted. You never take something positive on that field for granted. And I think that's kind of what let me be who I was on the field, because truly every snap I was out there, I was a little kid playing college football. And that's because I was doing what I loved. Yeah, it wasn't as a quarterback. It wasn't this star position or anything, but I went out there and I played like a little kid on Saturdays, and I let my enthusiasm show. And, that was one of the greatest experiences of my life, to be honest.
Yeah, I think we all saw your enthusiasm as fans. Absolutely. But it's funny, 2017 is when you started to get, your most playing time compared to the previous 2 seasons. You played in every game, but you obviously played for, a top 5 offense in the country that really wasn't punting that often. So was that like, obviously you're rooting for a touchdown in every play, but, you are, you play when you get to punt. So in a sense, the offense needs to go 3 and out or whatever, it has to punt. Mm-hmm. So was it sometimes frustrating? It's like, damn, like, all right, another touchdown, I don't get to punt, another touchdown, I don't get to punt. And I know you had other responsibilities, but that was kind of your main thing. Was that ever like, was that just awesome to see? Or is it sometimes like, damn, I kind of want to get down the field?
No, I loved it, because my perfect game was when I never had to punt. Like, I would much rather go out there and catch field goal and PAT snaps for Matt Wright and let him do his job than me coming up there and having to punt. And along with like the top 5 offense thing, like I never really had a whole lot of chances to really put my leg into a ball. Like everything was kind of a pooch punt because we're always at like the 45 or the 50.
Yeah.
I never really had a huge chance just to let the balls fly. But I'd much rather hold a field goal or a PAT than have to go out there and punt. It did not bother me one bit if I didn't punt a game.
All right, that's awesome. Well, that's a perfect transition because, I was going to ask you about Matty Wright. Obviously one of the best, if not the best kicker in UCF history. What was that like, holding for him, such a money kicker? And, what's your relationship? Obviously guys in the special teams and, can be pretty close. Are you guys, you still have a good relationship today? And, what was that like just holding for, arguably the best kicker to ever do it for UCF?
It was awesome. I mean, so funny enough, Matt Wright and Caleb Perez were my first roommates when I got to UCF. So I was with them since day one. Perez started off as a linebacker, but had a couple of injuries his freshman year that kind of set him back. And he saw being a long snapper as his opportunity to get on the field and to get on the travel squad. And the kid worked his tail off and became, a super talented long snapper who had chances to go to the NFL, but he had a bad knee issue that, kind of prevented that from happening.
Yeah.
But just the chemistry that we had from then and even like to today, like those are my day one boys. I can always go to them, call them, text them whenever I need something. I talked to Caleb, I think like 3 or 4 days ago. I talked to Matt Wright last week. But yeah, I mean, he made my job super easy. And having as a long snapper, you could probably count on one hand how many bad snaps there were as far as like it not being in the perfect spot. It made my job super easy. As long as I knew as I caught the ball and put it down on the spot, there's like a 89-90% chance that ball is going through the uprights no matter what. So I had the easy part. I wasn't getting hit like Perez was. I didn't have these big uglies breathing down my neck trying to run through me. I had no pressure on trying to score these, last second points like Matt did. My job was easy compared to what those guys had to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you were there for a lot of Matty Ice field goals. So, I got to ask you this, because he did hit so many field goals. You guys had some pretty legendary celebrations, obviously the shotgunning. You had your own kind of, golf one. And so what I got to ask you, I mean, those were great. I mean, the fans love that. What did the coaching staff think, especially of the shotgunning one? Because I mean, I don't remember if you did it before you were 21 or not, or whenever it happened, but I mean, the TV would always catch that and we all got a kick out of it. So, I mean, how did you guys come up with that? A, and then B, were the coaching staff like, don't do that anymore?
No, so it wasn't the coaching staff that, minded it, because the coaching staff never really saw it. Because when it happened, they didn't really see it because they're, once the touchdown scored, they're over in their huddles talking about adjustments to make and everything. And so I know it got caught on ESPN a couple of times. It was on the college game day opening our senior years, like the very first clip that was shown. But what actually happened is I think it was the dean of student activities or something like that was up in a box during one of the home games and saw us doing it. And radioed down for us to stop. And so we had to come up with a new celebration there, like right on the spot. And so we did throwing darts.
Yeah.
And we weren't too happy about that, but it turns out also like a letter got sent to I want to say it was to Whitaker, like on his desk.
Really?
And just like saying like we have to stop. Like it got all the way up to the president of the university. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we all enjoyed it while it lasted. I mean, yeah, they're not even allowing teams to do the horns down for Texas next year. So so the rules are so arbitrary and make no sense. But us fans got a kick out of it. Got to ask you too, that 2017-18 run there that you were part of 2 undefeated regular seasons. When I was in school, it was 07 to 11. So I had a couple pretty good years there, but nothing like those two. I have season tickets. I came back for a lot of games, and to see the energy of the crowd. I mean, when I was in school, there was a lot of games that were just like dead empty. I mean, that from the 2015 season. And it was, I was like one of the only ones at the games, and then sometimes it sucked because the crowd was lifeless. But, so many games that year that I went to, the USF game in particular, the conference championship, it was just so lit from the fan base. And what was it like to kind of experience the UCF crowd? I mean, I know we get sometimes a bad rap that, we're only at 45,000 seats compared to other like Death Valley and places that have so much more, but the bounce house gets super loud and super lit. So from a player's perspective, I mean, how loud is it?
it's deafening. Like people don't understand, like, yeah, you only see 45,000, but like those 45,000 are up close and personal to the sidelines of the field. It's not like when we played Michigan and it was almost sold out, but because that place is so wide instead of like down on top of it, it's not that loud. It wasn't that bad. I mean, but for packing 45,000 people into a metal stadium, like UCF brings the juice. There's no question about that. You can feel it in the air when that music starts playing, and the people start jumping up and down. You can just feel like the electricity.
Goosebumps, right?
Your hair starts standing up, and like it's one of the best experiences in that stadium. And then when you go back and like watch the film, like it's hard for us to watch film because the camera's sitting there bouncing up and down along with everyone else. So it's hard to try to get that thing focused on where it needs to be.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I mean, it gives me goosebumps thinking about it. I got to say, I think other than that USF game was the loudest game ever, the game day UCF versus Cincinnati, because I was there, and those first two plays when Ritter couldn't even get a play off, and it just got even louder because of the reaction to that. I think that had to be the loudest I've ever heard it, right?
That was the Mike Hughes kickoff return, and then when we beat Memphis for the conference championship at night, when we played, that wasn't at night, but when we beat them the second time for the conference, like that was
2018.
That was absolutely like the loudest I've ever heard that stadium.
Yeah, man, that's so awesome. Yeah, I love it. I mean, that we're definitely getting some recognition about, our fan base and electricity and, random Twitter, whatever things to say, best stadium environments, because we're up there. There's no doubt in my mind. So I want to get, before I let you go, I want to get a little bit into, present day. I think honestly, this was one of the craziest off seasons, not just for UCF, but for college football. I mean, you had the NIL go into effect. You have Texas and OU leaving for the SEC. And then on the UCF side, I mean, you have, a new AD that came in, a new coaching staff that came in, a bunch of transfers that came in. And then of course, a lot of this realignment talk, for UCF could maybe move to another conference, or maybe we're going to poach some teams from other conferences. Let me ask you first from a player perspective, what do you think of the NIL? Obviously it wasn't around when you were in school, but do you think it's good for college football? And don't get me wrong, I'm all about guys getting their money and all that, but something I like about college football is just like the tradition and the pageantry, and just like, I just love that it's not almost destroyed by business. And I know it was a business before, and it always will be, but just the non-paying part of it makes it feel like, all right, the players truly love the team they're playing for. So it kind of hurt me a little bit, as much as I understood that, that's the right thing to do, is to play players. But what do you think of it?
I love it. I mean, I'm kind of upset that it didn't go into effect whenever I was in college, because I missed on a pretty big chunk of change,
Yeah.
But I always I never was a proponent of the NCAA paying the athletes like a livable wage. I was always a proponent, if your face and your name can make the money, then you should be able to go out and use your likeness to make whatever kind of dough you can. Because there's kids in our locker room who were on scholarships that didn't have anything. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, like, free education is great, but Tommy down the street can go get a full ride scholarship with academics and then still go out and do whatever job he wants to and all that. Sure. Like that. And it wasn't fair. Like, I understand the whole, like, don't take free education for granted and everything. But at the end of the day, like, a lot of those kids, a lot of football players and athletes in general, some of these kids are taking, in truthfulness, like BS classes just to stay eligible to say you got your degree and help with all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, like, once you're done with college football, you're spat out. What I mean? Like, at the end of the day, like, college football is it's not a dirty business, but it can get dirty.
It sure can. Yeah.
You're essentially, you're a number, and if you don't plan out like the coaches hope you are, then you just get dropped down to the totem pole, and then someone else gets recruited, and you're starting above you, and then it's bad. But if kids have the platform of making money as a college athlete and can use their face, they can host camps using their names. They can do brand deals like Dylan Gabriel has, or guys like that. I mean, if you have the ability to do that, then by all means, you should be able to do that. Because it doesn't make sense for the NCAA to bring in millions and millions of dollars off of you as a player, and then you don't really get to see it, I mean, yeah, you get to see like the facility upgrades and all that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, we can't go out and make money I mean, because we're student athletes, we can't go get a job because we have to fill out no time. We have to fill out mountains of paperwork. You can't get paid in cash. Everything has to be checked and referenced by compliance. Like it was a hassle to try to get a part-time job if you wanted to. So I think it's long overdue. I don't think you're going to see the college athletic world get watered down by business, because at the end of the day, you still have to love football to go and practice, meeting, school, whatever NIL thing you have lined up, and then go out and play. Like you can't be half in, half out. It's going to be a grind, and you're going to end up just not performing like you need to.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, and I like what you said. I like the team or the NCAA can't pay the player. Like, yeah, if some business locally is willing to give you cash for your name, like that's great. As long as, it doesn't get a thing where it's like, Alabama can just start paying every single player to come, and then it just becomes super watered down. But yeah, I agree with you. I think if you can go out and have a YouTube channel, or you can, have some sort of deal that DG has, then yeah, I agree with you. So then the other part of the crazy offseason is obviously OU and Texas leaving for the SEC, which either in the short term and the long run could impact UCF, whether it's we leave the American or the American gets kind of beefed up with other teams. But the reason I bring that up is because I always get annoyed. I mean, on my page now, has a decent amount of followers. There's random trolls that come on and let's say, you guys play nobody, the conference has nobody. And I always point to the number one fact being, well, we put players in the NFL. And to me, that shows talent, whether you like it or not. I mean, so many guys from the 17, 18 teams, from special teams to offensive defense, are in the NFL. And not just at UCF, Memphis. I mean, that whole offense is in the freaking NFL. I mean, Cincinnati. I mean, so to me, that shows talent right there. There's nothing else that can show talent like putting pro players in the league. So that's always my argument. But, as someone, and I asked this to Terrence yesterday, as someone that, is on the field with these guys, when you play a Power 5 school, and in your time you played, Maryland, and, you played obviously Auburn, you played a couple other in 2015, you played a couple power schools, same with 2014. So you've played them. Is there that much of a massive difference between like your squad being UCF versus when you play these Power 5 schools? I mean, in my mind, I feel like the skill players are, almost even, and maybe they have some bigger linemen, but in general, like, when you're playing these guys, I feel like, oh my God, are they overwhelming me? Or is it like, no, we're pretty much on the same level as these guys.
The only difference I can think is SEC. Like SEC is different. When we played Auburn in the Peach Bowl, just like the size of dudes that they had was insane. Granted, we busted our tails in the weight room that we were beefy enough to, kind of manage that size. But that was the biggest thing. And then looking at LSU, just the defensive line they had, and it kind of showed like in the game, they kind of, once the second half hit, they wore us down with the defensive front. That's the only thing. Pitt, Maryland, like the AAC or ACC teams, there's no difference. They put their pants on just like we do. Auburn and LSU, those guys, there's a different size about them. Like the SEC is a different type of player. You have to be. But as far as every other Power 5, no, there's not that difference.
But when you say SEC, and you talk about the size though, so that makes sense. They have beefier guys on the line, and that will wear you down. But what about just that, the quarterback versus quarterback, running back versus running back, receiver versus receiver? Is that relatively the same, or do you think even they're like receivers, running backs are just a lot faster, maybe more skilled, things like that?
I think they're in the SEC. Their running backs are a little different. They're like NFL prototype running backs. They're 5 foot, 210, 215, if not heavier, and they're running downhill at you. Like they're big, stocky dudes like Kenyon Johnson. When we played him, like that dude looked like a bowling ball of muscle. Like he was thick. And I think that you have to be that type of running back to last in the SEC, because when you're playing against those type of linebackers and defensive line, like it takes a toll on your body. It's going to be very hard to be a 175-pound running back in the SEC and last for a season.
Sure.
And so I think that's the biggest difference as far as like linemen, linebackers, and running backs. Those are the differences I could see on between rosters. Receivers might be like a shade taller, but I mean, we have speed and height. Jacob Harris, Gabe Davis for reference, Trey Nixon, burner downfield, Flash now. He's not the biggest dude, but he can create problems on the back end. But I would put UCF up with any other Power 5 school, to be honest. We handled Auburn fine. I think we would destroy Vanderbilt. We would beat Auburn. Arkansas wouldn't be that big of an issue. Kentucky wouldn't be that big of an issue.
I mean, even LSU, that game was without McKenzie. I mean, maybe that would have made a big difference, you know?
Without McKenzie, and I forget how many guys they had drafted off that squad alone within that year and the next year. But I mean, it was being 8 points for using our backup quarterback and not McKenzie Milton. I mean, wasn't a bad showing, I don't think. I mean, UCF has the potential to hang on the field with any team ever. Like there's no doubt in my mind. There's some lucky bounces have to happen, yeah, for sure. But I mean, at the end of the day, you know, they put their pants and their shoes on just like we do. It's just about being prepared, controlling what you can control, and performing, and then let whatever happens happen.
Yeah, I agree, man. That LSU game, I agree. I mean, you did see the size difference in wearing us down, but I still think after that, Bam Moore pick six, if we had all the momentum, if they didn't, and then we almost went, 3-0, but then they called the penalty on, I don't remember if it was on Tristan Hill or who was on, but
he's at Mississippi State now.
Oh, that's right. It was,
his name slipped in my mind.
Randy Charlton, right?
Yeah.
They
spiked the ball.
And that changed the whole game, because if we get out of that, then it's okay. We're up 14-3 with the ball back. Maybe we score 21-3. I mean, there's no saying that maybe Joe Burrow would have led them to another comeback or whatever, but still that changed the game in my mind. But I see what you're saying with the wearing down and whatnot. So a couple more questions before I get you out of here, man. Great responses. I appreciate it. So obviously we, big offseason for UCF. They hired Coach Malzahn, the coach, ironically, that we beat in the Peach Bowl against Auburn. I remember when, before he was hired, obviously all the players were campaigning for Jeff Lebby at Ole Miss. And, obviously it was hard not to get behind that. When they're all tweeting, we want Lebby, then as me as a fan, I'm like, all right, let's get him. But then, we get Malzahn at first. I'm like, I don't know. And then you start to realize, like, well, forget the pedigree that he has. I mean, this guy was at Auburn was a top 10, top 15 coach in all of college football, especially when he was in the beginning of his tenure there. So what do you think about the move to bring in Malzahn? Do you love it? I think there's a tendency in the beginning to think, oh, he's a little bit older. Is he going to stay here? Is he just trying to get back to the SEC? But he's been saying all the right things. He's been doing a lot of great moves, bringing in a ton of great transfers, seems to really be building us back up to be a powerhouse again. So do you like the move? Do you think he's all in here?
I think it would have been super easy to go the younger coaching route. But then again, we're faced with the same dilemma 2 years later if we do that. As of right now, it is what it is. UCF is a stepping stone job. There's a ton of talent here, but it's been shown that if you get a younger coach, they're going to be here for 2-3 years and then off to the next big opportunity.
Right.
Which is great. That's not a bad thing. That's great for coaches to come in and use this place, use UCF as a launching pad. I think that speaks volumes about the program and where it's going. But I think Gus Malzahn is a great hire, not only just because the coach he is, but like the man he is. I mean, it shows how much the players love him when they're willing to leave Auburn and these other schools to come to UCF and play for him. That shows a lot. That shows how much respect he has among the athletes that he's coached in the past. I think he's going to be here for the long run, right? However long, because it would have been very easy for him to take an analyst job at another SEC school and just kind of ride on the coattails until he actually wants to retire. But I mean, I think the hardest part now is if he is here for the long run, and if we do have the success that we're expected to have under Malzahn, we're going to be seeing a lot of the assistant coaches and the coordinators getting poached.
Yeah.
So now it's just going to be rebuilding that year in, year out for the most part. But I mean, I was on the Lebby train too. But I mean, if I'm him, I'm not sure if I want to leave what Ole Miss is doing right now and preparing to becoming a really good SEC football team under the Lane train, and then have to come down here and try to build a program under UCF whenever the guy who hired you just left. And there's kind of that expectation of, all right, now you're here. Now you have to build us up or else.
Yeah.
I think with Malzahn's experience from Auburn and working his way through Tulsa, going to Auburn, having the winningest record against Saban out of any SEC coach right now, I think what he has and the staff that he has assembled and the transfers he has brought in, I think that shows just how bought in he is, because it would have been pretty easy for him not to go out and try to get these big time transfers and just come here and try to coast for the next 3 or 4 years and then peace out to the next SEC job.
Sure.
But I think the fact that he did what he did, brought in the guys that he brought in, coaches and athletes wise, it shows that he's going to be at UCF. He's here for the long haul. And I think that's going to be awesome for the program, because the way I see it, what's the Big 12's identity now that Texas and Oklahoma are leaving?
Yeah,
Like those are the two flagship programs of that conference.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, Baylor had their time. TCU's been pretty decent, but this is not that rivalry in the Big 12 isn't there anymore. Like you lost your two marquee teams to the SEC. Now, why Texas wants to leave the Big 12 and go play in the SEC, I have no idea, because they couldn't win the Big 12 themselves.
Yeah.
Oklahoma, I can understand, because Oklahoma shows they can ball.
Yeah.
Texas hasn't showed they can ball consistently, at least. I think it's going to be a rude awakening for them once they get to the SEC. But now UCF and the American themselves has a very unique opportunity in how big of a program and how big of a conference they want to build. Because, UCF could ditch the American and go to the Big 12, but I don't think that's going to be great in the long run, because at the end of the day, there's what makes the Big 12 a Power 5 school, or Power 5 conference now.
Not anymore, really.
Yeah, I think there's better ball being played in the American week in and week out, with Cincinnati, Memphis, us. Tulsa's going to be a really good program. SMU is going to shock some people this year with what they can do. I really wish that USF will figure it out, and they'll become very, I'm not even like respectfully, I wish they'd figure it out, because that rivalry, when that 4 on I-4 means something, like it did the 2017, it's so much better. Like whenever that game decides on who goes and plays for the conference championship, then that just makes that game mean so much more. And I think with our contract, the Americans' contract with ESPN, like we have the ability to very easily be the Power 5, the next Power 5 school, if it chooses to be that way. Like there's no reason for the American to split up and then go to all these other conferences. Like,
and there's a 12-team playoff going to potentially happen.
Exactly. Like it wouldn't benefit us. Like we're not in any better situation of becoming one of the top 12 teams if we ditch and go to the Big 12 now that Texas and Oklahoma are gone.
I agree.
I mean, there's going to be, the one team that's going to be the it team in the Big 12 now. Now that Oklahoma's gone, it's going to have to be, I guess, TCU or Iowa State. Like it's going to be one of those teams. I mean, there's that, and if they don't play any better defense or they play in the past, then that's not very competitive football to me.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. So I agree. I think we're in a good spot in the American now, better than it's ever been, especially with the 12-team playoff coming. So I got two more questions for you, kind of two parts. It's about expectations. So first, I want to ask you. I was in school when winning 10 games in a conference championship was like out freaking standing. And then, the 17-18, I think spoiled a lot of fans, especially newer ones that hadn't been around. But I see you have the fans that are like, 11 games conference championship or bust. And then you have the people who are saying, well, no, I mean, that's not realistic every year. And, we should just be striving for a conference championship and a major bowl every couple of years. But I kind of understand both sides. Is it realistic to go undefeated? No, I mean, only like Alabama and Clemson do that every year. But at the same time, right. I think we need to have expectations and strive for greater. Like we shouldn't be okay with, 7, 8 wins, or like how a year like last year was 6 wins. But one thing I always said about UCF and really until recently, and not even that much, we've never really been that consistent, right? Like we've had, some great years followed by some bad ones. Like I've always said, I would love to just be like Boise State. You'll get to that point where we're winning. They win freaking 10 games every single year. And they win a conference championship more often than not. So, I mean, should our expectations always be like, we got to have the 17-18 type season, or should it be more kind of, let's get to like 9-10 wins consistently, compete for a conference championship, and then, a major bowl game every couple of years? Or is it a bust if we don't get to the Peach Bowl or whatever the Group of 5 bowl is that year? The year's a bust, because since we've kind of tasted that, anything less does feel less significant, but obviously it's just not realistic every year. But so I'm kind of wondering from your perspective, what is a good expectation to have for this program, year in, year out going forward?
I think the best expectation to have is a conference championship, or at least competing for a conference championship, because I mean, last year was not acceptable. That like 6 win, like that's not UCF. That's old UCF. That's mid-major, just trying to hang around and be an underdog. I don't think that UCF's at that point anymore. I think UCF has to show that if we want to get the respect that we deserve, you have to be competing for conference championships year in and year out. And then once that happens, like Boise does, and once you start winning your conference every year, then you're automatically going to be in that top 15 ranking going into the next season. And that's how you get your respect. It's easy to be a one and done team, but once you can do it like year in, year out, top 10, top 12, top 8, once you can start doing that and you can show people that, hey, we're a really good program and we're here to stay, we're not going anywhere, that's when the respect comes, like he has, because Boise has, don't you said that, they win 9-10 games a year and competing for a conference championship every year. And people will be like, okay, yeah, Boise, they're a good team because they do this. UCF can't afford to do that. Not with the type of, not with what we do on Twitter and that kind of stuff. We can't sit there and beat our chest and then go poop out for a 6-win season, That kind of stuff's not acceptable. But I think like a realistic expectation to have is for this program to compete for a conference championship year in and year out. And then if we do our job and win the games we're supposed to win and win our conference, we're going to be in that 12-team playoff. And that's kind of like everything works itself out. Like as a player going from my 5 years there, our goal was always conference championship, because no matter if you win your conference championship, you're going to get a decent bowl game. It may not be the Peach Bowl, it may not be the New Year's Six, but it's going to be one of the decent bowl games that you get. Now, my freshman year, because there was like a 3-way tie for the conference championship between us, ECU, I forget Cincy, I forget who it was.
I think it was Cincy, yeah.
But like that kind of played a factor in what bowl game we went to, and it wasn't a great one down in the St. Pete Bowl. But when you win your conference, you're going to get, that decent bowl game. It's not going to be the Peach Bowl, but it might be a Belk Bowl or something like that. But it's not going to be the Bad Boys Mower Bowl or the Birmingham Bowl. You know what I'm saying? Like it's going to be a decent one that attracts some eyes. And then I think once that happens, then once more eyes gets on UCF, once people start seeing the kind of ball we play year in and year out, once more, primetime recruits start seeing those games being played on New Year's Day and around Christmas and around New Year's, then that's how you build your program from the ground up. And that's how you keep, that machine running of being setting that bar, setting that standard, and then just trying to win rings, really.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you. So final question here. So based off those expectations, but this upcoming season that starts in, 20 plus days here has a lot of hype. There is, expectations are through the roof, with all these transfers that got in. And then of course, the fact that we have arguably a top 5 quarterback in the country entering, as a junior, he's an upperclassman now, getting all types of preseason awards, Maxwell Award. And, he's put up a lot of great numbers, hasn't had the team success yet in those first 2 years. But, the fact that we have a top 5 quarterback, then you have all these big time transfers coming in, the D line is looking nasty, and that seems like the expectations are there. And obviously Cincy is sitting there ahead of us, but what do you think expectations should be in year one of the Malzahn era? Obviously there's a lot to be said about chemistry. I mean, just because you bring in 13 guys doesn't mean they can just all of a sudden plug in and boom, we're perfect, but the fact is there is some great returning talent. There's some great new incoming talent, but we did lose a good amount of players from last season's team, a lot of influential nights, a lot of legendary nights, the Otises and McCrays and Marlons of the world. So what do you think the expectation should be in year one? Should they, be like, should we be beating Cincy or, kind of be tempered more like, hey, we're probably a second place team?
No, I think the expectation should still be conference champion, at least competing for the conference championship. I think we're going to find out a lot about Boise when we play them. That's going to show a lot because that's a very good week 1 game. We're going to find out a lot about how well these guys plug in. I think it's going to be interesting to see how DG transfers from being shotgun only to going under center and doing a little bit more of the pro style type of offense. It's not pro style, but it's not just sitting the shotgun every time and hard count and then see what look they get into. Like it's going to be a little different, but I think DG is a top 3 quarterback in the country and he's not number 3. That's my opinion. The fact that some of these things happen by like 5 or 6 it blows my mind, especially when he has the stats to be number 1. But people want to argue about we're gonna play anybody and all that kind of stuff. But that's ridiculous. If you ball, you ball. It doesn't matter who you play. It's hard to put up those numbers even against crappy talent, crappy schools.
Yeah.
But I think with the guys he's brought in, with the kind of the vibe I'm getting from talking to some of the guys on the team, everything seems to be gelling pretty well right now. I mean, could they be blowing smoke? Maybe. But I mean, I'm expecting UCF to compete for a conference championship, and that's my personal expectation year in and year out. That's what I want to see UCF doing. It's just competing and being at the top of that level. If we lose to Cincy, then oh well, But I mean, as long as it's going to be a good game and we're 1, 2, or 3 in the conference, then that's okay with me, because that means that we're doing our job and playing really good football.
Yeah, I agree. And it's year one, it's going to eventually all come together and we're going to be right back in that top spot. So, hey, Mac, man, I appreciate you joining us. That was a lot of great responses. Night Nation will always, think of you in a great light. And I appreciate you joining the podcast, and good luck with your NFL career, man.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you very much. I had a blast. Anytime you want to talk football, just let me know.
Absolutely. Always down. That was Mac Loudermilk, former UCF punter. This episode will be up on my YouTube channel as well as Instagram. Don't forget to subscribe and follow. Thank you, Night Nation.